The Red Lion. Once upon a time, a long time ago in Persia, the king had just died, and the people mourned him for a whole month, because he had been a wise king who had ruled justly. Now, Prince Azgid was the crown prince, and it was his turn to be king next, after the month of mourning had passed. Prince Azgid was heartbroken over the loss of his father. But there was something else that was bothering him too. You see, he was afraid. He was afraid because it was the tradition throughout generations that every new king of Persia, before being able to take the throne, had to prove that he was worthy and courageous by fighting the Red Lion, the most fearsome of all the creatures. And Prince Azgid had always been terrified of lions. Now the first few days had passed, and Prince Azgid was comforting his mother and had shed all the tears that he was going to shed for the time. And the vizier, the advisor, came to him and said, Your Highness, you do know that pretty soon it will be time for your ordeal. You should start training. We know that you are a very good hunter already, but we do need to get you some armor because lions' claws are very sharp and their teeth are very long. And Prince Azgid was just listening to this and thinking, And after the vizier left, Prince Azgid started pacing back and forth in his room. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't. The Red Lion is the most fearsome. Nope. I'm out of here. So Prince Azgid packed a few of his jewels, packed some things that he might need, and secretly, in the middle of the night, he got on his favorite horse, and he rode fast and fast and fast. He rode away for 2 days and 2 nights, barely stopping to eat or drink or sleep. And finally, when he and his horse were completely tired out, and when they were in a land where he didn't recognize anybody, and he knew that nobody would recognize him, he stopped. It seemed to be a poor land, but it was still a good land. He saw in the distance a young man who was leading a bunch of sheep, a shepherd he was, playing the most beautiful melody on a flute. And the prince, getting off his horse and very tiredly leading the horse, followed the sound of the flute until he reached the well where the young shepherd, was taking his sheep to water. The Prince Azgid, and his horse drank deeply from the well, and then he sat down to listen to the shepherd play. The shepherd, of course, had seen the stranger and this fine horse come riding up, but he didn't ask any questions. And Prince Azgid thought, it's quite peaceful here with the sheep. Maybe I could be a shepherd. I could do that. Why not? Sit around all day and play the flute and not have any worries or any people saying that I have to go face. Yeah, I could do that. And so he introduced himself very politely to the shepherd and said, Kind sir, I cannot tell you my name, and I am sorry for that. But all I can tell you is that I am a troubled young man who has had to leave home and is looking for a new place to live. May I work for you? Will you teach me? The shepherd smiled at him kindly and said, Of course. We know what it's like to sometimes need to run away. But don't worry. With music and with wind and with the right view, all your troubles will disappear. Follow me. And the shepherd took the prince high up to a hill where he could see the whole valley and the city nestled below. It was beautiful, and it was so peaceful there. And the prince just sat listening to the wind and to the flute of the shepherd. And then suddenly the shepherd jumped up and said, Quickly, now, we have to go to the city. But why? Said the prince. It's so peaceful up here. Why don't we just sleep out here under the stars? Oh no, said the shepherd. This is why. And he lifted up his tunic and showed some deep scars Last time I stayed out, the lions came. And I fought one off, but still it got me. And it took some of my sheep. I'm never staying out at this city again after dark. Hurry, hurry. It's always a danger. Lions generally come out only at night, but sometimes in the day as well. You always have to be watching for them. Oh, said Princess Eve. So this is lion country, is it? I gotta go. And he jumped back on his horse and raced away. Not even stopping to wave goodbye to the shepherd, who, since he didn't want to get caught out after dark, wasn't looking backwards anyway, just taking his sheep towards the city. Well, Prince Azgid raced all that night and all the next day, and he went towards the north until finally he reached the desert. Now this desert was so completely different from the lush green valley, but still it was beautiful. And he saw in the distance some Bedouin tents, and he got off his horse and led it. And they were both so tired. They walked up to the Bedouin tents, and the sheikh of the tents of the Bedouin tribe came out and welcomed him. The prince knew that he was in the presence of a great man, and he bowed low to the ground and said, "Sir, I cannot tell you who I am or why I have come, but I can give you these jewels if you will allow me to live with you." "Nonsense," said the sheikh. "Here, hospitality is a huge part of my culture. Come, rest, drink some water, and I will have my servants tend for your horse. You will be like one of my sons. Keep your jewels. I do not need them. I can see that you have come a long way, and that you are in search of peace." And so Prince Azgid stayed several nights there with the sheikh, and he and his horse rested, and after a while the sheikh took him out hunting. And they went out hunting with all the sheikh's men, and they were all quite impressed by the prince's hunting skills, because he was a great warrior and also the best hunter of all of them. And after coming back that night and having a great feast with all the game that they had caught and were roasting on the fire, and there was singing and dancing, finally the sheikh said to him, "We are amazed. We do not know where you are from, or where you learned to hunt like this, but we need a man like you in our community. Pretty soon, we are going to be packing up our tents and moving further in, and it is always dangerous because whenever we're on the move, the lions generally try to chase us, and they try to take the baby camels who are going at the back, or sometimes even the children. We need a good hunter like you to hunt down these lions so that they will leave us alone." "Yeah," said Prince Azgid. Sure." And that night, as everyone slept, Prince Azgid quietly packed up his things, snuck out of the tent, got up on his horse, and raced away. And he rode for 2 days and 2 nights. He rode east until he came to a beautiful, beautiful place with a waterfall and with red sandstone. And there was a palace there, the palace of a very wealthy emir. He went up and knocked on the door, and the guards didn't want to let him in because, of course, he seemed tired and weary from traveling so far, but he showed them his ruby ring and said, "I cannot tell you who I am, but present this to the emir and tell him that I bring more gifts for him if he will let me stay." And so the guards ushered him in and introduced him to the emir, and the emir welcomed him and said, "Of course you may stay with us. Perizide, Perizide." And suddenly, Prince Azgid saw the most beautiful girl he had ever seen coming down the marble staircase. Her eyes were dark with kohl, and the emir said, "My darling daughter, would you show this young stranger around, please? Make him feel at home and invite him to the entertainment this evening." But Azida smiled and showed Prince Azgid the gardens and of the palace and the pools of water, and Prince Azgid knew that this was the place that he was meant to be. And that night, Perizide, she was the entertainment because she played the harp so beautifully, and also the flute, and listening to her music, Prince Azgib's heart felt lighter and lighter, and he said to himself, this was why I ran away, to meet her. And he felt that he was falling in love. And just as he was smiling at her and she was smiling at him, suddenly he heard, what was that? Oh, don't worry, said Pirizide. That was just Bulak, our guard. He's yawning. Yawning? Your guard? Yeah, he does that when it gets late. And by the way, it is very late. I'm going to bed. Good night. And she walked up the marble staircase to her rooms, and the Emir said, that's right, it is late. Come with me, my young friend. I will show you to your room. And they started walking up together the great marble staircase, when suddenly, at the top of the staircase, was the most enormous lion that Prince Azgid had ever seen. Oh, said the Emir. Don't worry about that. That's Bulak. He's our guard. He's harmless. He's perfectly tame. He only attacks if anyone is afraid of him. I'm not sleepy yet. Oh, very well. Well, come up whenever you're ready. And the Emir went up to his rooms. And Prince Azgid slowly walked back down the stairs, and he saw the lion flicking its tail, shaking his mane, and looking straight at him. Prince Azgid shut himself inside the music room and barred the door and pushed some chairs and things in front of the door, and he waited. And he heard the padding of the lion coming closer. And then he heard, and he felt the lion scratching at the door trying to get in, and Prince Azgid was trembling. Said the lion. And Prince Azgid trembled even more. And suddenly, everything went quiet. And Prince Azgid waited. He could hear the lion breathing on the other side of the door. And his heart, he could hear it thump, 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 thump. Then he realized that the lion wasn't threatening him. He was warning him. The lion had roared 3 times. Prince Azgid slowly started breathing deeper. His heart started beating less fast, and he listened. And he heard no words from the other side of the door where he knew the lion was, but somehow he could hear it clear as day. 3 times you have run away, the lion seemed to be saying to him. If you run away again, no matter where you go, there will always be a lion waiting for you until you go back home and face your own. And then Prince Azgid heard the lion's soft, heavy paws padding away. Prince Azgid did not sleep at all that night. And in the morning, when dawn broke, he carefully moved aside the chairs and furniture that he had put in front of the door. And he opened up the door and he stepped out into the courtyard. And he waited for the Emir and for Princess Perizide to come down. I am sorry, he said. I must leave. There is something I have to do. And he waved goodbye. Perizide watched him go. He got up on his horse and he rode back until finally he arrived back home, just in time. And the crowds had gathered to watch him. Prince Azgid stepped out into the arena. He was trembling. He saw the gates open up, and the great red lion sprang out. Prince Azgid stood his ground, staring at the lion. He had no weapons, nothing to fight the lion, because it was the custom that the princes of Persia had to fight the red lion with their bare hands. And he waited as the lion sprang towards him. And lay down at his feet, belly up, waving his paws in the air, asking for scratches. It was tame. The lion was tame. The lion was as friendly as a kitty cat. And gingerly, Prince Azgid reached out his hand and touched the lion's red mane. And the lion it was tame. They had always been tame. Every prince of Persia had had to fight a tame lion. It was only his fear that made the lion ferocious. The crowd cheered, and Prince Azgid walked out of there with his head held high and his hand on the mane of the lion. In due time, he married Parizide, and they ruled together justly